It's TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast.
The Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R Radio Star. I've never come up with an actual name just for Star Wars. I know some Star Wars podcasters do that, where they have a Star Wars name within their podcast. Maybe someday, or maybe one of the listeners will check that out. Now, just as a promise to the listeners, I am a big believer in Star Wars comics. This is constant content that's coming out that, speaking of other podcasters, could be talking about, and they never do. I make it a point to do that. But there's so much news to get into this month, April 2019, because of Star Wars Celebration, that I'm going to hold off. We got a huge comic book roundup we're going to end up doing in May. That's kind of the bottom line of all this. So, there's Age of Rebellion. There's a TIE Fighter comic that started. Galaxy's Edge comic started. There's so much to get into. And so I'm going to be breaking into that in May. But I won't be doing that alone, just like I'm not doing this show alone, because I am being joined by none other than Robin Freebeard for TIE Fighter Renegades. Man, welcome to the show.
Woo! Woo! Yeah. And you know what? There aren't any buts about it. Or maybe there are, because this episode goes out to all the Eric Butts of the world. We love you. We love your passion. We are family, man.
Oh, here. I totally agree. In fact, I think it was on a Zomia ONE Underground Q&A, which if anyone wants to sign up for that, ZomiaOne.com, and get access to exclusive content, including that Q&A. I did talk about the Eric Butt situation, which we definitely, we'll be talking about that, I'm sure. In fact, why don't we start breaking into stuff, Robin? Right on. I would gladly dedicate this episode to Eric Butts. And for those that don't know who that is and what that's all about, you're going to find out. But let's start talking about it. What was it, 5 days did this thing run? Like a Thursday to a Monday?
Yeah, I think it's the longest celebration I was in, because the one I went to was only 4 days.
Right. Now, you went to Anaheim.
Yes.
Correct. And what year was that? 2 years ago?
That was
3 or 4, maybe something.
Yeah. It was when just before Force Awakens came out.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. All right.
Because that's where we saw the teaser for the first time.
Right. And so this is, of course, was in Chicago, though we do know that next year's is going to be in Anaheim. And I think right now we have plans for everybody involved with TIE Fighter Renegades to be there. Myself, as well as you, Rob, and we'll see who else happens to show up. So that could be a big ticket if you're a fan of TIE Fighter Renegades. And, of course, if you're a fan of Star Wars, you know what that's all about. But why don't we talk about this year's celebration in general? A lot of news came out. We're going to cover all of it. You better believe that Episode 9 trailer is out, and wow, is there stuff to talk about that, and The Mandalorian, and so much more, and we will get into it. But, Rob, we were talking before we went on air, and you had some thoughts about celebration. You've been there. We have a friend of the show who he was at Chicago this year. Looking great, actually. Saw him getting some pictures with some Star Wars heavies, and which was fantastic. But you kind of had, tell me about, I guess I wonder, first off, give me a gist of celebration. You've been there. You talked to our friend who was boots on the ground this year. Break it down.
I am just a super sweaty nerd. I'm as sweaty as they come. I've been to all kinds of different science fiction conventions, Star Trek conventions, comic book conventions. You name it. If there's a sweaty con around, I've probably been to it.
Absolutely.
But, there's something really unique and special about Star Wars Celebration. And in a lot of ways, kind of words of the human language fail to completely convey the experience. In fact, I think a lot of people watch it streaming online. And I think if that's the only way that you've seen Celebration, you don't really 100% know what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way I could describe it is if you embodied all the things that you love about Star Wars with your friends and wrapped it up in a blanket and surrounded yourself with it. That would be Celebration, because it is just a celebration of pure Star Wars love. And you don't, when people put down money to be at a place like Celebration, these are fans that really love Star Wars and things that you don't see or don't hear are like basically a lot of the noise and crap that you hear online or
Mhm.
on YouTube and things like that. And it's pretty much non-existent. And I feel a lot of ways like Celebration is really kind of like the true sort of like honest representation of what Star Wars fandom is.
And where it's at and how it's feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. I mean, certainly when you were there in Anaheim, and the Force Awakens trailer went. I mean, you're talking about Star Wars at arguably its most white hot, or at least its most white hot in decades.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
right.
like I am not, I'm an atheist. I am not a religious person. I'm not a spiritual person. I have been in the past, but not anymore.
Sure.
But like through all my experience of life, seeing that trailer in a huge stadium with thousands of other fans for the first time, and hearing the words "Chewie, we're home," that is about the closest I've come to into life to a spiritual experience.
Yeah, I can only imagine, because I know how I felt when I saw it at home, and I was just like, I mean, the chills. You'd think that, I don't know, the ghost of Lucas or something was touching you, or Obi-Wan maybe. But yeah, I mean, I can appreciate that. I can only imagine what it's like to be in a room full of people, with that, with all that reaction and just the thunderous sounds coming from it. Yeah. Now, I mean, you raise a good point. Like, once you create, I don't want to say a barrier to entry, but just I don't know what term to use. No, I don't, because I really don't like to say barrier. But once
but
go
it's
ahead.
like you have skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you have that, it's amazing how a lot of this bullshit and hatred and honestly racism, I mean, in a whole slew of, all the things that have been levied against Star Wars since it came back on the scene, really, how it falls away, and it's like it's never even existed,
Right.
And this is interesting too. I mean, I've brought this up like on Sovereign Tech in the past, and maybe even on somewhere in the gaming grid, on Zomia ONE, where, like when Steam, the gaming platform, when they just put, to be able to comment on things, you have to spend at least $5, on a game, which is, spending $5 on a game. I mean, that, like, really, if you're not spending at least $5 on Steam, what are you doing on there? And, what kind of time are you spending? And that $5, when you put that down, that just pretty much I mean, it killed so much spam. It killed so much noise. It killed so many of the problems where you had, I mean, you'd be getting messages from people, hey, do you want to trade something, blah, blah, blah. And it was just some dumb shit. And it cleaned up the platform so quickly. As soon as you put that where there was some skin in the game, even just $5, and I'm not sure what a celebration ticket goes for. But
it depends. I mean,
yeah.
If I think if you're going for like of course have like these super premium passes, which give you like, it's not quite backstage access, but like you get to the front of the line of the panels and you get your own special seats and whatnot. And
right.
Those are several $100s. But like the 4-day pass, I seem to recall it being like in the $150 range, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, for 4 days for a convention, that's not bad. I've done 1 day conventions that were half that price, and it was just 1 day and like a few hours. So that's very reasonable in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, once you put that there, then all this shit falls away. I mean, this is a hard, I don't want to spend too much time on my aspect of it, but just that, I mean, with social media, like, you don't know what's real. You don't know what accounts are real. You don't know who actually, like, I mean, one person on Twitter can represent 100,000 accounts,
right?
And it can make it look like there's some kind of like grassroots complaining or movement against something in Star Wars, when no, it could be pure bullshit. It could be just one guy,
not to mention,
or whatever.
Not to mention the bullshit of the algorithms of things like Facebook and YouTube, and basically they're just kind of like, you like Star Wars and you watch a couple Star Wars videos, and then they start feeding you all these hate videos because they think it's what you want to watch.
Yeah. And I agree. And I also think that a lot of these platforms, social media and so on, they just, they breed the worst, I think, in humanity. Like,
right.
It just breeds our worst attitudes, because get people into a fucking room talking Star Wars, and you're not going to, anybody that talked like an asshole like that would be shown the door so fast, saying, what are you doing, you fucking jerk? You know what I mean? And I mean, or I don't even think they'd act like a jerk. I think that once you get like in front of a person, you suddenly have your respect back and your empathy.
Right. And that was the thing too, is like, you go to Celebration, you talk to people, and like people are obviously there. They all love different things about Star Wars. They're all passionate about different things. And, you might run into some people who are passionate about things that you're not so passionate about.
Right.
But you know what? There is that kind of just like universal respect and kind of understanding of, wow, this person really loves this aspect of Star Wars. And if you just like, you sit and listen, maybe you'll learn to appreciate something about it that you didn't before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember, oh boy, I don't even know if I want to go down this road, but I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I'm just going to say this. It's a beautiful thing because it wasn't always this way. It's a beautiful thing that there are places where people can fans can get together. I mean, I've been going to Star Trek conventions since I was in the single digits, I mean, forever. And
right. Same here.
Right. And I know that, like say when a guy dressed up like a Klingon, he was picked on pretty hardcore,
Yep.
when he was outside of, say, the convention or something like that. I remember a guy dressed up as a Klingon in Syracuse, New York. And like, I mean, he was just trying to get a burger at Burger King. And I was sitting there and people were just ripping on him. It's like, man, leave it alone, and so, but I'm glad that today, I mean, a lot of that is kind of normalized. And now, I mean, you have people coming to these things like mechas, and it's really, it's impressive. I'm glad that Celebration exists, and I'm glad that when you do go there, you're meeting fans, not assholes.
Right.
In general.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do remember like, outside of the convention, like I'd be sitting down at a restaurant and people would be making offhand comments about all the people wearing Star Wars costumes.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember seeing anything like really kind of negative, like people, bullying or picking on anybody. And it really, like you said, it's a beautiful, like Celebration is so aptly named.
Right.
Is it really what it is? It's a celebration of people's love.
Yeah. Now, I want to play off of this, not play with it, but just kind of spin off of this into, I mean, really our first story is, and the thing that everybody's waiting for at Celebration was the trailer for episode 9, which we now know is titled The Rise of Skywalker. Quick shot. What do you think of that title?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, there's been a lot of speculation about what it means.
Sure.
And I think that's what it was intended to do.
Yeah, right.
Whether I'm sure that it's going to have some sort of significance that we're not aware of yet.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't have like any strong feelings about it either way at the moment, because I know we don't really know what it means yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say quickly, I think, compared to titles like Attack of the Clones or even The Phantom Menace, it's a straight-to-head title, and I'm happy with that,
Right.
That's fine. I can appreciate what, like, Phantom Menace meant, and even at the time, I remember, like, liking Attack of the Clones because it sounded like Empire Strikes Back,
Right.
But yeah, no, I like it fine. Anyway, so everybody got to see this trailer pretty much live together because it was streaming from Star Wars Celebration. We're going to talk more about that in a second. But there was a video that went pretty viral a popular thing on YouTube is for people to do trailer reactions where they watch a trailer, and as they're watching it, they are recording themselves, kind of doing a double screen bit of business. And, you see what they have to say, or if they, whatever happens, maybe they start crying, in the middle, because it's such a beautiful thing, And there is now I'm sure he's famous. I don't know how famous he was exactly before, but there is a YouTuber named Eric Butts, and that is his real name. And he understands the unfortunates of the last part there. And he takes it tongue in cheek, which good for him.
Right.
But he gets very emotional. He's a very passionate fan about whatever the hell he's into. And I say, Satan bless him. I think that's wonderful. I'm a very passionate fan myself. In fact, when I first talked about this story, I admitted, I said, if I watched Tron 3 trailer right now, if Disney suddenly said, yeah, we're doing Tron 3, I'd be in fucking tears. So, just no problem.
Absolutely. I mean, and the other thing I agreed that you said is like, I wish I felt that passionate about this trailer. I mean, I really do. I feel the same way. I wish that it would bring me tears. It didn't, but
right.
I can really appreciate, the way that hit home. And I've certainly, felt that way in the past by things in Star Wars. I got pretty teared up, at the season 2 finale of Star Wars Rebels.
Right. Oh yeah. When Ahsoka versus Vader, I mean that.
Yeah, I mean,
holy shit.
Yeah.
I mean, so Eric Butts ended up crying, pretty hardcore, and he's like, very like he has a very exaggerated face. I'm not saying that it's unintentional or that it's not authentic. I'm just saying that he really it's in its own way, it's entertaining. I want to say in a beautiful way to see that kind of passion just explode on his face, and he starts crying and everything. And not just one, but quite a few people on Twitter, perhaps of your more conservative or alt-right persuasion, started sharing it around saying, this guy's not a real man. He probably doesn't have a girlfriend. He probably wears cargo shorts, blah, 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 and started ripping on this guy for having his passion about for being passionate about Star Wars. I actually retweeted about this, and I also I bought cargo shorts that night, just to
right on.
Yes, because fuck that. If you're going to tell me, anyway, and now, I mean, first off, not that any of this matters, but the guy is engaged. I mean, he has, right. He's going to be married. I actually get the sense he's probably fairly successful with whatever job he happens to have. I mean, it was ridiculous, the response that was had, and the insults lobbed at him, and the reaction overall. Mark Hamill got involved, if I'm not mistaken, and just said, he said, thank you for being so passionate and for caring about this. And, it's really sad. And I've been seeing this a lot, where you have a lot of, and particularly comes with more of your female conservative, it'll be generally a female user on Twitter or something. They'll have an American flag next to their name.
Right. I remember seeing that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're the ones that'll say, oh, if your man is into comic book movies, dump him now. And, a lot of this other stuff. Or
I think the other thing is just, the passion surrounding these kinds of movies has introduced us to a new breed of undateable men, which this is not true. We've been around here the whole time. Sorry to burst the bubble.
Yeah, exactly. And what's sad, because I keep getting told, and I know I talked about this previously, but I want to talk about it here. I keep getting told that we're in this post geek singularity. Everybody's a geek now. Everybody watches Game of Thrones or some other horseshit, and that nerds aren't made fun of anymore, or geeks aren't made fun of anymore, and aren't this oppressed class. And a lot of people don't realize. In the 90s, the 80s, and even before then, in a very real way. We were oppressed. Be it in high school, in middle school, and wherever, getting beat up because we're wearing a Starfleet uniform or something like that. It was really fucking bad. And I keep getting told that that's not the way it is anymore. But then you see the reaction to what happened with Eric Butts, and it's oh, well, I guess that didn't go away, or it's on a resurgence. I guess the episode 9 trailer says nothing ever really dies. But it's really sad to see that kind of that this attitude still exists, where just because you're really passionate about something, that you're going to get picked on for it.
Although it's not surprising the kind of people it's coming from. These are people who want to go back to living in the 1950s.
Well said. Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. I went around looking at some of these Twitter comments and just kind of checking out the kinds of people they are and their profiles and whatnot, and very unsurprised to see some of the people they follow and retweet are some of the same quote unquote libertarian dirtbags that used to travel in the same circles that we did.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. And oh man, the things I want to say about that.
Oh yeah, I know.
I want to dig in.
And I know you know exactly who I'm talking about.
Yeah. But Yeah, no, I mean you're right. I don't know. There's the meme out there that and anytime something like this happens, I always see at least a few people share the same meme, and I usually hate memes, but this one's really well done, where it's just a little comic book basically, and it's somebody whispering into somebody else's ear, just saying, "Shh, let other people enjoy things."
Right.
And that's so like it just ends it should end the entire argument. Just fucking let people enjoy their shit.
Right.
You know, it's yeah.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I no, I completely agree. I mean, and I've been fighting that fight all my life.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny because there's even a degree of like internalized oppression where like fan groups will like take that on and then oppress other people within their fan group who they seem to think are like lower on the totem pole.
Yeah.
And that's that here again, this is the kind of shit you don't see at Celebration.
Yeah, which I'm glad to hear that that doesn't exactly happen. I mean, I think to some degree, I don't think people understand that the reason, well, like Eric Butts looked like around maybe our age, or maybe he's in his late 20s or early 30s. I don't know. I do think people don't understand that why some people take the stuff really seriously and are like canon junkies and all this other shit is because, frankly, they were oppressed, when they were picked on or whatever. Like, I mean, I can remember thinking back to the 90s where I didn't understand. Like, wait a minute, why are you beating me up because I'm talking about Star Trek or I'm wearing a Starfleet pin or something like that? And those are the words that would come out of the bully's mouth,
Oh yeah.
And when you say that, or when you experience that growing up, like that shit sticks with you, and your fandom becomes a badge of honor, or it becomes like not a badge of honor, almost becomes a pink triangle. And look, now folks, understand, I'm Jewish. Like I understand what actual oppression like is. I'm not saying these are on the same level at all. I'm just giving it as an analogy. I mean, but you really, you stick by that, and you do become very passionate about it because for some reason you were picked on over it. You don't know why, why somebody felt it so important to do that to you. And so you take it very seriously. So I kind of understand why there's people who also kind of become almost like a priesthood within fandom, and where they feel like they can judge who the real fans are, because I mean, they felt like that this is almost life or death shit for them in a way.
Right.
But at the same time, that doesn't, they don't realize they're just, it's just the cycle of trauma.
Yeah. Well, here again, and I think a lot of that kind of evaporates when you're actually introduced to a wider spectrum of fandom in a place like Celebration. Because I mean, here again, face-to-face interactions, you most people recognize that it's not exactly, proper to be treating one another like that just in daily life, let alone at a place where you're all supposed to be having fun and enjoying something like Star Wars. And,
yeah. I mean, and so I'm glad that they live stream these things so that you can actually see it,
right.
And everybody has a chance to see it and enjoy it together in a very real way, which there's a moment in particular that I can think of that is not, I mean, it's on YouTube, but like, it's not a part of any major release that I want to get into.
There was two moments in particular that, I mean, like I in our discussion about Celebration, I want to bring a photo, but like real kind of like visible, big vindications of this sort of attitude were like the standing ovations that Kelly Marie Tran and Ahmed Best got at Celebration.
Yes,
just absolutely amazing. I mean, like, and here again, like, I'm sure just watching on the stream, you're only getting, half or 25% of what it was actually like to be in that audience at that moment. But I mean, you can just feel the love pouring off the screen.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I was going to bring up that I feel like within fandom communities, things have improved significantly, particularly like, when we were growing up, and I'm sure you remember this even better than I do, Robin. I mean, like there was literally, it was Star Trek versus Star Wars. Like you had your fandoms and they were at each other's fucking throats. And that's gone. Like I feel like that's basically that doesn't exist anymore.
It sort of does. I mean, I went to a comic book store long ago, and I was buying something for Star Trek, and but I was wearing a Star Wars T-shirt. And the guy behind the counter, he was a little bit younger than me, but he was jokingly trying to instigate a little bit of that, and he's all like, "Well, I picked my side," and he shows off his Star Wars tattoo. I'm like, okay,
right.
He says it is possible to love both, and like I love that tattoo that you have. That's really cool. But I also love Star Trek.
Yeah, well, if we can just rib each other over it from now on, that's fine too.
right.
Because we just remember that was a thing. Holy shit! But yeah, great point to bring up about the standing O. That especially, I certainly heard the Kelly Marie Tran one. I mean, that was amazing. I mean, do you have more you want to say on that with Kelly and Ahmed Best?
I mean, like really the one that hit me was Ahmed Best, and I don't know if you saw this. I think it came out last year, but like Ahmed Best put out a video talking about kind of his brush with suicide after the Phantom Menace came out, and I mean that was just a really just powerful, hard hitting moment for me. Because I was not the biggest fan of Jar Jar, I admit. I mean, I wasn't out there actively, like really, really hating like some people would. But I did at the time wish that the character was not in the movie. Since then, I've softened my opinion quite a bit, and certainly since hearing Ahmed talk about it, like seriously, if you watch that video and you still have that same sort of hatred in your heart, wow, I mean, I think you need to really kind of re-examine your life.
Yeah. I mean, this is, speaking of connecting with people, and again, one of the beauties of Celebration, where you can actually like encounter, these celebrities, actors, getting past some of the celebrity mindset, I think would be helpful, because I mean, look what happened with Jake Lloyd. I mean, there's a lot of this and a lot of it came from, honestly, I hate to say it, like fans just ripping on these guys.
Right.
And I mean, look, yeah, I'm one of the people, I actually really like episode 1, and I always have. But I mean, admittedly, I get the Jar Jar thing. Like, I was like, yeah, no, this wasn't the best idea, ever. I mean, I think for people to claim that George Lucas was being racist with the creation of the character, that's utter fucking nonsense.
Yeah, it is. It really
based upon who he's married to. And I think I just caught a story today that they're like trying to buy like Black Enterprise or something.
I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but I mean, an idea that George had originally floated in the very beginning of making the first Star Wars was that he wanted to do an all African American, cast for the heroes. Yeah.
Which I mean would have been awesome.
Right. But the studio shot him down. So
sure.
I mean, maybe there was some racism involved, but it wasn't coming from George Lucas.
No, yeah, exactly. But I don't think that people, appreciate that when, they just come out there, they think these celebrities are some other people, like on some other level. And so they just like lob out their verbal tomatoes at them. And I don't think they realize just how brutal that is, and that they are just people. Sure, they're on that stage, but they're just other people.
Well, not only that, it's like, when these people invest so much of themselves in their art, it is hard sometimes not to internalize some of the harsher criticisms of the art itself.
Yeah.
And so when people are out there, setting fire to Jar Jar, action figures and kind of some of this more ugly stuff. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely empathize with how that might be hard to process. Yeah, I tell you, I mean, this is kind of off, and it's going to sound kind of funny, and it's sort of half-hearted, but not exactly. There was for a while, there was that big theory that like Jar Jar was behind everything, was like, right, he was like Lord. A Sith Lord, yeah.
If they really did that, I would have applauded. I would have been like, fuck yeah, because right? I mean, just because he crashed the boss's hay blibber, he gets kicked out. Like, no, let's find out that he was like some really bad dude, and he was doing some really terrible shit, to like boss Nass or whatever, and almost like usurped him or something. I mean, there could have been Oh, they could have done some cool shit with that.
Did you see that great Robot Chicken skit where like Palpatine was like, yes, I completely manipulated you and to elect me, as a Supreme Chancellor for eternity, and like then the scene like darkens and Jar Jar's like, yes, you manipulated me.
That was that was awesome.
Some choice shit.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I wish they do that and just give it the, I mean, because if even bad ideas can be turned into great ones, that's the bottom line. And anyway, but at the very least,
it certainly would have been a much better fate than Chuck Wendig gave him.
Oh, that was terrible. He was just some street clown. I'm like, you asshole. What do you? There was no call for that,
No.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Celebration fortunately does give, at the very least, the actors the respect that they deserve. I remember last year's Celebration, Hayden Christensen was there, and he also got like a round of applause.
Yeah.
And well-deserved, in my opinion.
Right.
I think he's a fine actor. Yeah, exactly. So, if anything, I'm glad Celebration is there to keep some of these people's sanity, and it sounds like it's keeping sanity all around going, in a lot of ways.
Well, I think it really just here again, it puts the truth to the lie to a lot of the bullshit you see online.
Yeah. And it does call out that it is bullshit,
because I mean, I think if there's any sort of like irreality, it's what you see on the internet. It's not what Celebration is the actual reality. Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I would kind of say, like, Celebration is where you get to put your money where your mouth is. If you really hate it that much, go ahead, show up, and maybe say something. But that doesn't really happen. But then there were people who were doing like the billboards wanting the EU back, So sometimes they'll put their money where their mouth is, I guess. But anyway.
I mean, I the billboard I thought was at least like, respectfully done. Now, what some of those people have done, since then or even before, basically, like I remember hearing stories about when The Force Awakens came out, and some of these people went out and they were spoiling the death of Han Solo to people who were waiting in line to see the movie. Yeah, I mean, fuck off, really.
Yeah.
And here again, those are the people that aren't going to pay to show up to Celebration.
Yeah, agreed. So, well, in any case, glad that Celebration exists, and wow, do we have unless you have something more you want to add in on that, we've got a ton of news to get into from Celebration. And
absolutely.
All right, so let's do it. Of course, the biggest thing, and again, the thing that everybody really was waiting for, was that Episode 9 trailer. Again, we do know the title, The Rise of Skywalker. I'm sure everybody knows that title by now. We don't have to tell it here. But I am enjoying calling the movie Rise of Skywalker instead of just Episode 9, because now it feels a lot more real for me, because we were waiting quite a bit. We'll get into that conversation later. We have been waiting for this movie longer than we have any other Star Wars movie in recent memory. So anyway, the trailer hits, couple minutes, nice little teaser. I mean, there was a whole panel kind of before that and also including Billy D. Williams comes out and got a very nice ovation as well. I mean, and there's a moment that happens after. Now, this is becoming a thing, and it actually happened multiple times throughout Star Wars Celebration, where you show a trailer and they end up showing it twice. Okay, and this happened with Last Jedi as well. They did it where like roll it again and blah.
Well, they
blah,
did it with The Force Awakens. This is a Celebration thing.
Yeah,
they always do this.
Yeah, and it's never as cool. I just want to say this quick. It's never as cool. One of the most amazing, best jobs I'd seen done of like a double trailer play was actually at a Microsoft event. I don't want to give Microsoft any credit, but Panos Panay was first introducing the Microsoft Surface at the time, or the Surface Book. It was the Surface Book at the time. And they played the trailer, and it's a Microsoft laptop, which they had never made before. This was just a few years ago. And everybody was like, holy shit, that's amazing. He's like, all right. He's like, wasn't that beautiful? And everybody's giving this huge ovation. And then Panos Panay says, let's play it again. And you're like, all right, yeah, people do this. They play a trailer twice to, just so people can get another look. And then they do it. And then there was the point where the Surface Book, which is actually 2-in-1, but nobody knew this at the time, suddenly the tablet part of it lifts off because the trailer continues the second time around, and everybody's just like, oh my God, I mean, and that was, nobody's really done that level where like the second time you play the trailer, there's something that just blows your mind that you didn't know was going to, where they give you like an extended trailer of some kind.
Right.
And that would have been great if that happened. That didn't happen.
Yeah, that would, man, somebody should take a cue from that. That's brilliant.
Oh, that's a tremendous show business. Panos Panay is brilliant. I'll give them that. But they did do something pretty damn close as far as getting like an ovation. Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's break down the trailer, and because that matters, and then you're going to find out why you were lucky if you watched the live stream, even though you still can see it on YouTube. Anyway, so the trailer hits. J.J. Abrams, puts it on. They don't announce the name of the movie until basically when it drops in the trailer at the very end. But we open up with a scene of Rey, of course. A link in the show notes if for some reason someone hasn't seen that, but I have a hard time believing that. I mean, the amount of views that it had inside of 5 minutes were unbelievable. But we open up with Rey. She's wearing all white. There was a very stupid story coming from CBR.com, I think it was, that was claiming her lightsaber was also white. No, it is not. It is blue. She does have. Holy shit! I mean,
where do these people come from?
I don't know. Anything for those clicks. Anything. It's unbelievable.
I mean, I've blocked Screen Rant at this point, but I could only imagine what they've been saying about it.
Oh, fuck. Oh, I see a Screen Rant story like once a day come up, and it's always something stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, we see that. We see the lightsaber. It looks very much like Luke's lightsaber, the blue and all that. And more or less, I think that's been kind of confirmed. She also has Han's blaster that was given to her in The Force Awakens, which was a very nice touch. They made it a point that you see that. And it looks like we got a TIE silencer coming. Whether or not it's Kylo Ren actually flying it, that's up to some debate. And Rey
I think that's a new TIE fighter, because it's not the same TIE silencer from Last Jedi.
Yeah, no, it looks close, but there is like a bit of a different paint job or something like that.
Well, no, the wings are the same, but like the cockpit looks a lot more like a traditional TIE fighter, but with like those red elements on it.
Yeah, I could get in. Go ahead.
Yeah, whereas the one that was in The Last Jedi had like a really kind of different kind of canopy that was kind of like extruded.
Yeah, it was a bit more. It almost looked like a cut emerald or something. It was
right.
Yeah. I could kind of get into a side comment just on this part here. I am very. Well, this might come up a little bit later in the show. Like I am impressed now, years later, decades later, since the original trilogy came out, that the Millennium Falcon basically looked the same in each film. Boba Fett had the same armor in each film. In fact, even when he gets added into A New Hope in the special edition, he looks exactly the same as he does in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It's abundantly clear that wardrobe changes and changes in styles of ships per movie now, like every single movie, these things change, is really just to sell more toys or, to sell more merchandise.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I do think Rey's costume in this movie looks quite a bit like what she was wearing in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the white has purpose. I think there's meaning, and that's good. But I feel like it's starting to get annoying when like they're changing something every movie, and you really realize that, God damn it, this is just to sell toys. Like you have to put out the new version.
I mean, you kind of have to, like being a child of the 80s, you kind of have to come to terms with that, because like all the cartoons that we watched, like just about everything that we consumed as kids was to sell toys. It doesn't bother me as much.
No, I know. But like He-Man looked like He-Man straight through until they did New Adventures, and that was admittedly because toy sales had staled, and so they had to they redid everything. They made Skeletor look like a samurai. They did all this other stuff, but it was just to sell toys. You're right. You're totally right. Those are 30-minute toy commercials. That's all they are. Fortunately, like with He-Man, we'd get writers like J. Michael Straczynski that would try to do something that fucking matters, in it. But at the same time, come on, you don't, you know that they're changing shit up for just for that sake. And I just really wish they wouldn't. Like, the Millennium Falcon having like the different dish. I mean, there's a reason they had a different dish because it got knocked off in Return of the Jedi. But I don't know. It seems more blatant to me, and I don't like it.
But now it's got the original. I don't know if it's the original, but it looks similar to the original dish again.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you saw that shot when they were going through hyperspace. It's got the round dish now.
So, yeah, I just, when it's hard not to notice that's why they're doing this. It's not to give you a cool ship again. It is to.
But here again, I mean, like the name of our show. Like, I'm never going to complain when they come out with a new TIE fighter. I will never complain about that.
I agree.
The only thing that I'll complain about is that I don't have a new video game in which I get to play all the various TIE fighter variants.
Precisely, which we've talked about in the past, and I share that with you completely. It's just, anyway, you notice it, but I mean, because I don't think Boba Fett would have been as big a deal if he had a different suit of armor every fucking movie.
Right.
It worked because he had that consistent look of cool, and there's no experimentation as far as that goes. But anyway, regardless of that, that's a whole other conversation. We might touch on that more a little later. But we have, this TIE silencer or whatever it is, this new TIE fighter is coming after Rey. Rey does this like epic flip, and I'm watching it, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's hard to like make you go ooh ah anymore, but I thought it looked cool. I mean, what did you think of that moment?
Yeah, it did look cool. Even though the scene's kind of ridiculous. And what is Kylo Ren trying to achieve here? I mean, you think about it logically. Is he trying to ram a Jedi with a starfighter? Does it really seem to be a good idea to do that with somebody who's holding a lightsaber? And you, of all people, know what a lightsaber can do?
Yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, it's definitely a moment meant to just look really, really cool.
Right.
And it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Mark Hamill, of course, at the time, and we don't have to like break down every scene, but Mark Hamill at the time is saying, 1,000 generations is in you, or we've taught that into you, which some people are saying, oh, that means that Anakin was teaching her, Yoda was teaching her as well. All kinds of people have been teaching Rey. We won't know until the movie hits. We have.
I think they're just referencing the books that she recovered from from Octo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the 1,000 generations is definitely a reference to the Jedi, no doubt, because that's what Obi-Wan says in A New Hope. But yeah. So anyway, that happens, and that's kind of the big scene. And then basically you're getting really epic music. They're using a very epic version of the Princess Leia theme, which is very well done. The music in Star Wars trailers has never been a problem. It's often better than the music that ends up in the movie is late. But not complaining there.
Yeah, anyway. there's a really interesting musical cue at the end of the trailer too. I don't know if you caught on to it.
Well, you can mention it. We'll drop that.
Okay.
So anyway, you're getting Princess Leia's theme. You're seeing all of the characters and all of this. I mean, there's some interesting planets that we might be getting a look at and so on. I mean, it is important to note that Rey was on a desert planet. Whether or not that was Tatooine or Jakku is up to debate. And I mean, you see Kylo Ren kind of like doing some kind of wrestling move down onto a guy, which looked really cool. He's putting his helmet back together.
I want to say something about that scene where he's knocking down that guy. I mean, is it just me, or does the guy he was knocking down look like he might have been a Knight of Ren?
I don't know. That's a great question. Because I'm looking at it and I'm just like, Yeah.
I mean, it's and this we'll talk about this more later. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it is, seeing things. Now you do see a scene where Rey is hugging Princess Leia. And that, of course, got a round of applause because we knew she was going to be in this film somehow. And that looked very natural.
Right. So and I think that's why they returned Rey's costume to looking like what she was wearing in The Force Awakens, so that it would sync up with that, because we know that footage came from The Force Awakens.
Right.
So they had to
Carrie
have,
Fisher.
they had to have a way of that syncing up more. They might have enhanced it somehow to add elements to the costume that weren't there before, but overall, the costume looks very similar to what she was wearing before.
Yeah, a real win to include a scene of Princess Leia in the trailer, just to really drive that point home. That was important.
Yeah, honestly, I think everybody needed it.
Yep, I agree. It was like the one note they had to hit.
Right.
Another note that I think was important for them to hit was Lando. And man, like now the trailer was cool. Seeing Leia, that was great. But when Lando is in the cockpit of the Falcon next to Chewie and laughing, that's when everything went, oh, fuck yeah. Like that
right.
was, it's like, as soon as, man, I mean, it was, and I want to comment more on that, but there's another point that we got to get to before I can make my overall point on that. How did you feel though when you saw Lando?
I mean, that's when us OT fans creamed our jeans.
Yeah. Yes. Oh man. I mean, I was ready to, I don't drink, but I was going to snap open a Colt 45 right there. I mean, I was
right.
It was so, and he looked good,
Yeah. I mean, nobody racks a cape like Lando.
No. And that laugh, I mean, it was golden. That was exactly. Yeah, it was exactly what you needed to show. It was everything that mattered in that, and it instantly took that trailer to another level for me. Yeah. And then it goes into, I mean, again, you're getting various reveal of the characters. You see Finn, you see Poe, and so on. You see there is that droid, which we saw in the poster we talked about on the last TIE Fighter Renegades. Right. There's that buddy droid to BB-8 that was there, which I think that came out during the panel too. Like
yeah, it did. That's kind of where they did the big reveal, and it was actually the full robot that could roll around and articulate and whatnot, and that was cool.
Yeah, it was nice. But then you get this scene. Okay, we're getting to the end here. Then you get to this, again, only 2 minutes. You get to the scene, and I'll tell you, the first time I watched it, I did not realize what this was. It just looked like some mountain out in the middle of a sea, out in the middle of an ocean. And I didn't realize it's actually the Death Star. It's the Death Star 2. And as far as...
Has that been confirmed?
Yeah, I think that's been confirmed.
Okay.
That it is the Death Star 2. But it hasn't been confirmed. Are they on the forest moon of Endor? Are they on Endor? Like, those
that's
are
an
two
interesting.
planets.
That's an interesting point because I mean, it literally could be almost anywhere. And I'm going to go back to something like really old here, but there was an old West End Games storyline for their role playing game where basically. You go out and find this huge chunk of garbage in space that's nowhere near Yavin 4. That's an exploded chunk of the Death Star that was thrown through hyperspace when it exploded.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, like, hey, this could be anywhere in the galaxy because they had hyperdrives all throughout the Death Stars. There wasn't just one big hyperdrive. There was like multiple hyperdrives working in tandem. That if like one of these chunks of the Death Star got thrown through hyperspace, that could be on any planet.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So and. Also, I mean, important to note is that in the art book for The Force Awakens, there was originally a planned scene where Rey is swimming into the Death Star 2.
Right. And I believe those were artworks that were done while George Lucas was still involved with the production.
Okay.
So that's interesting that, and apparently Georges have some involvement with JJ on the production of this movie. So, and in a way, I think that, and I think that maybe they might be playing that up a bit just because they're trying to say, hey, this is kind of going to be a return to form sort of thing. And we're going to talk more about that later. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was interesting to see that element show up. And I do remember that artwork. And I do, like I said, I think it's interesting to point out that I do believe that artwork came before J.J. Abrams even came aboard.
Yeah. So you see this during, and again, at first I didn't realize until like the second time that I watched it, I'm like, oh, that's the Death Star. but then you're as the heroes are walking towards us, and we have been told by JJ that like this is a the heroes go on a mission kind of thing,
right?
Very reminiscent, obviously, of Return of the Jedi.
Right.
We're go ahead.
Yeah, which I mean, like to a certain degree, that's kind of been lacking in the sequel trilogy so far, is all the heroes being together and going on an adventure together. I mean,
it's one of the things that made Return of the Jedi great for me.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So, well, anyway, during that, you're seeing all the heroes, and you hear Mark Hamill saying, we'll always be with you. None of us is ever really gone, or no one's ever really gone. And then fade to black. And all you hear is that classic cackle from, from Ian McDiarmid, the Emperor, who plays the Emperor, does the voice, and then just the, Star Wars Rise of Skywalker hits. And man, when I heard that cackle, when I heard the laugh of the Emperor, now some credit to some podcasters who said Palpatine is going to come back. They were theorizing that. They were right about, well, anyway, there's some argument around whether or not Palpatine's actually coming back. I think if you're putting in that cackle, for fuck's sake, he's going to be in the movie. So you wouldn't do that otherwise. You certainly wouldn't do what we're about to talk about. But if I could have shit myself, I would have shit myself. Like it was just that was so awesome to hear that. And I have a point I want to make about that. But how did you feel, when you heard that cackle?
I admittedly I have mixed feelings about it. Like I agree with you when you say that like Palpatine just kind of like ups the ante on anything Star Wars, anything that he's involved in. And I definitely agree with that. At the same time, Palpatine coming back is not exactly the most original idea.
Sure. Very reminiscent. I mean, not an original idea, A, within Star Wars, B, within science fiction in general. I mean, I instantly think of Dune.
Right.
I don't think we're going to get a Palpatine Gola. I'm not opposed, but that's, but in any case, I mean, and of course this had been done in the old EU with the Dark Empire series or trilogy. Go ahead.
And that really kind of like Dark Empire along with Heir to Empire really did kind of relaunch Star Wars at that time.
Concurrently, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think to a degree they're kind of banking off the success of that, to reignite, people who aren't just in the fandom, but just interest in Star Wars in general.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is, personally, I think it's only a good move. And in fact, you brought up the point that I was going to get to, because I've said this in the past on TIE Fighter Renegades, that like as soon as the Emperor comes in, like everything just gets serious and like you're paying attention instantaneously. The other person I think that happens with, and we talked about this when we did one of our questions of the month, was our favorite original trilogy character. Right. And I'd brought up Lando. I said that was my pick. And I said, look, when this guy comes on the scene, everything just goes up. Everything, the ante's up and everything just starts playing on another level. And you even get that in Rebels, you get that in Battlefront 2, you get that in all kinds of stuff. And so to have Palpatine and Lando in this trailer, I think just brought everything up to 13. I mean, it was, I think those two moments, whether people realize it or not, like really made this, because otherwise, honestly, the trailer would have been very lackluster without that. And of course Leia, but
I mean, it's like my feeling is that like I have not. I'll be perfectly honest with you, and I'm not to knock anybody who had a different reaction to me. Like I have not been particularly excited about Episode 9.
Sure.
Even since The Force Awakens.
Sure.
I think this is a very smart move. Mm-hmm. It's all going to depend on how they execute it in the movie itself. And that is a big what if, in my opinion. I agree. I mean, my only excitement around Episode 9, and this is going to lead to a subject later in the show, is that it totally decides how good 8 is for me. Like, Rise of Skywalker is going to be the final word on, is Last Jedi a good movie or what the fuck did it do? And anyway, we'll talk about that more later. But I hear you. I mean, but I'm excited for it for that reason, just to see. I mean, I know they didn't have a plan, but just to see where this is kind of going to go. But admittedly, having Palpatine back does excite me. I love the character. Right.
And,
Like
go ahead.
I really do want to be excited.
Sure, sure.
I do, but like I knowing J.J. Abrams and just the way the sequel trilogy has been going, I'm keeping my expectations low. And I'm not even doing it just intentionally trying to keep my expectations low so I won't be disappointed. No, my expectations are low.
Yeah. No, understood. Yeah. Now tell me about the note, the last musical note that or the
Oh,
that
right.
you hear
Yeah.
at
So
the
I
end.
mean, I didn't actually notice this until the Arlnauts did their which is a YouTube channel,
Mhm.
did their Kylo Ren reviews trailer. You know, like they do this every time a new Star Wars
Yeah.
trailer out, is they have Kylo Ren do a review of the trailer, and it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But he pointed out something in there that I'm like, holy shit, he's right. And like when they reveal the title of the movie, Rise of Skywalker, like he points out, and he's right. This is like the music at the end there is actually kind of a more, epic and heroic rendition of Kylo Ren's theme.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that
And
might
this
point
kind
at
of tie
something.
into the thing, where I'm thinking like, wait, is the guy that Kylo Ren is knocking down in the trailer a Knight of Ren? Is he is he either doing this whole redemption arc that some people have
Yeah.
theorized, or is he like just trying to like be total, like is he like trying to resurrect Sith and just eliminate all the competitors?
I mean, yeah, right. And a lot of people have, and there's debates on both sides of who thinks redemption's a good idea for Kylo, who doesn't. I'm in the camp, don't do the redemption thing, but it smacks of maybe he is.
Right.
If this music is any kind of cue. We also have to watch out for musical cues in Star Wars because, like, the whole Darth Plagueis thing with Snoke in The Force Awakens, wherever the hell that went. But yeah, that's interesting. If Kylo Ren is going to really be a Sith Lord, he shouldn't even have like a Knights of Ren. Like ultimately, right. A Sith Lord stands completely alone, right. Because his lust for power makes him the last person alive or last person standing anyway.
Right.
So
it's good you bring up the Snoke thing too, because them killing off Snoke in Episode 8, like we kind of should have seen this coming. It really kind of did necessitate them bringing somebody like the Emperor back.
Right.
Because I don't see Kylo Ren carrying this thing on his own.
Yeah, no, I agree. Oh man. Yeah, well, that musical notation's interesting. Star Wars does have at times use that to play with foreshadowing, but that was more under Lucas's tenure.
Right.
I haven't really seen that under Disney, so I don't know.
And I don't know if you've heard the rumor about apparently Harrison Ford has some involvement in the movie. And whether
that could get interesting.
Where it's a flashback possibly, or even, a vision through the Force or whatnot. But apparently he has, recorded a scene in the movie.
This could get interesting. So now I want to get into the trailer ends. We get those musical notes that you just mentioned. And that's the end. Everybody's clapping like crazy. Lights come back up. And I want to talk about what happens right then.
Yep.
Because this is a big deal.
People lose their minds.
That's exactly what happens. So what ends up happening is, again, lights come up, like we just said, and out walks, out of like nowhere, Ian McDiarmid onto the stage. And extended pause, the whole thing. The crowd's just going nuts at Celebration, and everybody's clapping. And because, you just heard the Emperor's laugh, of course, it was him. And, he holds because they just don't stop clapping, and I think he just wanted to come out and just like say what he was going to say and then go back. But he just holds it, and it's so beautiful. And then he just brilliantly just picks up the microphone and just says, "Roll it again." They play it. The crowd just goes nuts in full Emperor voice. He does the whole thing, and it was holy fuck. I was losing it. I thought that was so cool. the best thing they could have done with that trailer was have him come out at the end, after the trailer plays, and just give that. I mean, what were your thoughts on that one, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, the brilliant move. I mean, that really kind of, like, for me, was the highlight of the trailer. Oddly enough, I mean, it was something that wasn't even in the trailer.
Right. Yeah, I mean, everybody on, like, when they were sharing it on Twitter and everything, everybody just shared the trailer and had it say "roll it again," like in quotes above it. I mean, because it was so brilliant.
Yeah, and it was so cool because, like, they later on in the day, the StarWars.com team that kind of, like, does the live stream stuff. They're doing an interview with him, and somebody, I think it was Andy DeGroots, asked him, about his presence during the panel and everything, and he just had such a great line. He's like, "Well, I just happened to be in the area and thought I'd drop in for a laugh."
Oh, it's perfect. It was so perfect. I mean, and some people had been saying, for some reason they're getting Ian McDiarmid to actually come in and voice the Emperor on Rebels again. I mean, when they could just use Sam Witwer, who does a great job as Palpatine or Sidious or whatever. And a lot of people are saying you're bringing him in because you're warming him up for when he's going to be playing him again. So that's why some people, or one of the major reasons a lot of people were suggesting that the Emperor was going to come back in this movie. And yeah, I mean, and for him to come out at the end, I mean, you get the laugh is one thing, but then for him to come out right after, oh fuck yeah, I mean, that was so well done. I don't think they're ever going to top that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, give me any other thoughts you had on that specifically.
I mean, there's, what is there to say? I mean, it was, like I said, it was just such a really a brilliant move, and I kind of on one level I recognize that it's marketing, but goddamn, it's brilliant marketing.
Oh, sure, no, totally, it was brilliant marketing, and well, anyway, we'll see what ends up being a thing, because there was interviews with Ian McDiarmid after the fact, who was saying, well, no, I talked to George Lucas. George Lucas said, no, the Emperor's dead.
I think that's kind of getting the wrong play, I think, in the press, because when I saw the interview where he said that, it was at Celebration, and he was talking past tense. So yes, at one time, like when they were making Return of the Jedi, yes, George's comment was that, no, he's dead. That's it. He's gone.
Right.
But we know that in Star Wars, people can change their mind, including George Lucas.
Oh, absolutely. Which he did through the original trilogy over and over again.
Yeah. So people playing this is Ian McDiarmid saying that right now he's for certain that the Emperor is dead, I think is a bit misleading of the press.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, anyway, the trailer overall, I mean, my personal opinion of the overall trailer was it was largely lackluster, minus really three moments. Leia, seeing Leia, like that had to happen. They did good on that. Lando and the Emperor's laugh, like those made that trailer anything, worthwhile, in my opinion. Otherwise, there wasn't a whole lot really shown. I mean, what do you think about the trailer overall, Rob?
I pretty much agree with you. I do think it was pretty much lackluster, but that was kind of what I was expecting. Mm-hmm. And I'm unfortunately at this point, and for even before I saw the trailer, I mean, I was expecting this to be somewhat of a lackluster movie. I very much have a feeling that bringing JJ back was the wrong decision. I think it's essentially going to be a return to mediocrity.
Yeah.
In terms of Star Wars movies, much like The Force Awakens was. I'm sure he'll try his best to do something new and surprise us. Whether or not he can, I have some serious doubts.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this. And
yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this before, but I think it is such a huge shame that Colin Trevorrow left the project, or was asked to leave, because I remember hearing early on that Trevorrow kind of like revealed to Daisy Ridley what his plans for episode 9 was, and she says she broke down and cried.
Right, she cried. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I here again, I kind of feel like, we're going to get JJ's episode 9, and this sequel trilogy obviously is we know for certain that it's not what George Lucas had in mind for the sequel trilogy. So there's gonna, much like with Rogue One, I feel like there's these alternate versions of the movie that are going to exist in the ether that we're probably never going to get to see, or if we do, it's going to be in the form of a comic book, kind of like they did with the early script of Star Wars that Dark Horse put out, the Star Wars comic book.
Right. Yeah. So now a lot of people are expecting episode 9 to basically retcon episode 8. I don't think we heard anything like specifically during any of these panels from J.J. Abrams or anyone else that was going to end up like really being a thing. I mean, if the Emperor's coming in, I don't think Snoke's going to come back. We do have a story linked to in the show notes that talks about this. I got to say, like, what we've seen, the feel that I get so far from The Last Jedi does kind of feel like a rehash of Return of the Jedi. And that's J.J. Abrams' MO. Like, right. I don't know how many original ideas this guy even has, if any. And so, I mean, that worries me. But, with it being like Return of the Jedi, I mean, it did make me think about The Last Jedi, where I was like, that really wasn't Empire Strikes Back. Like I didn't, no. I mean, there's some cues like on Crate where it kind of feels like it was copying Empire Strikes Back, but then at the same time, it's really, I mean, and maybe the frustrating like training of Rey by Luke is kind of similar to Dagobah. I mean, but it really feels like a very different film. And
yeah, well, I mean, for good or for ill, The Last Jedi might be like the most unique Star Wars movie in existence.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I mean, do you think that they're going to do like a bunch of retconning to episode 8 through episode 9?
I mean, I don't think there's going to be any like hard retcons. I think there's going to be different takes. I think JJ is going to try to go back to what he originally had in mind, because we know from between the production ending on episode 7 and starting on 8, that Rian Johnson wanted to insert some stuff into the end of The Force Awakens to create, better connection between that. And J.J. Abrams turned him down. Right. And I can only assume this because it didn't mesh with what his vision for the movie was.
Right.
And like I said, here again, I think he's just going to be returning to that. I think, it's going to be returned to his mediocre stylings. So, yeah, I think we might get some soft retcons, but nothing like really hard.
Yeah. But I mean, it is coming out that a lot of people are going so far as to call Rise of Skywalker to actually be Force Awakens 2. Like that's basically what they're calling it. And like almost to the point that they think Last Jedi might get ignored. And I mean, that's a lot to conclude based upon some interviews and a 2-minute teaser trailer. But yeah, I mean, some things like go ahead.
I mean, that'd be a lot of work. I mean, so much. I mean, here again, for good or for ill, like really big things get laid down in The Last Jedi,
right?
That you just simply can't ignore.
Right.
The killing of Snoke, Luke dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are things you can't change. They're set in stone.
Right. I mean, like the suggestion of Kylo Ren, like rebuilding his helmet, seems to be. I don't think Rian Johnson would have kept that going, like I think he destroyed the helmet on purpose, and like that had some kind of statement to make. And I think J.J. Abrams is kind of changing things with that, or changing tone and direction.
That's one area where I wish they had continued the change a little bit. I mean, Kylo Ren is pretty much going to have the same costume he had in The Force Awakens, other than that his helmet, is pieced back together and it's got those red lines in it and whatnot. Yeah. But, I remember seeing some concept, I think it was for episode 8, where like he shaved his head bald, and I thought that was a really cool look. that
Yeah.
they could do for episode 9, but obviously that's not what they're going with.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen them change that up a little bit and not just him, put his helmet back together.
Yeah, I mean, I think the red cracks almost looks like lava in the
Yeah.
in the helmet of Kylo Ren. I mean, that'll sell a new set of toys, so that's what really matters. But
Right.
no. But yeah, I mean, the one thing, like, if we're gonna get the Emperor, we don't need Snoke back. Like, if I didn't know about the Emperor coming back, I would say, okay, can we get Snoke back for this,
Right.
and finally let him like finish out his storyline or whatever the fuck was in mind for him.
Right.
We don't really need. Go ahead.
Like the thing about Snoke's death is kind of like unique in Star Wars. Is you actually see him die for real. It's not like Boba Fett falling into the Sarlacc pit or the Emperor being thrown down that shaft. I mean, yes, the implication is that they're dead, but you don't actually see a dead body. With Snoke, we see a dead body.
Yeah, I think this is like a rule now in Star Wars that if somebody gets thrown down a shaft, and makes you wonder about Han Solo too, they might still be alive because
Right.
Darth Maul, of course, ends up down a shaft, and next thing you know, he has 6 legs. So there's getting tossed down a shaft is that's the Star Wars form of immortality right there.
Right.
It would appear.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I don't need Snoke back. I think if they do any kind of retconning with like Rey's parentage, I think that would be only smart. I understand like Rian Johnson's philosophy behind making her parents like be nothing.
Right.
But also this is Star Wars, and I don't know. I feel like there has to be something more. Like I do want something more there.
I think JJ made a big mistake with The Force Awakens in that I have a feeling he always had something in mind for whose Rey's parents were, but he played it so close to the vest that he literally didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
He probably didn't tell Kathleen Kennedy. He definitely didn't tell Rian Johnson what his plans were. And he was too afraid of it getting out. And I think maybe if you just let, a couple other people in on it, what he thought, the way it should go, maybe we wouldn't have gotten all that crap in episode 8.
Yeah, all that confusion. Yeah. That's the one where I expect something to happen and I do expect some kind of explanation of what the fuck the Emperor was building, like with Gallius Rex on Jakku.
Yeah. My hopes aren't high for that, just because that's one of those things, like extraneous things that is mentioned outside of the movies that they don't hash. That obviously none of these directors feel like they have to pay any heed to. Yeah.
I don't know. Well, this is where it's going to get interesting. We'll see how this, and I've said this over and over again that I have no real opinion about The Last Jedi until I see episode 9, because you got to tell me what all that stuff actually means.
Right.
And I imagine that I would have felt the same way if I was alive more alive, I should say, in the 80s. And like The Empire Strikes Back would totally be gauged upon what's the truth that we find out in Return of the Jedi. So I feel it's a very similar situation as far as that goes. But anyway. Point. Yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. So why don't we go ahead? Let's shift gears into news that another panel, of course, but news that where a trailer was shown, but no one outside of Celebration was supposed to be able to see it, and a shame because let's just say TIE Fighter Renegades, we've got a link for you. We got your hookup and you can go watch, actually see this trailer. It's a shame because this was really exciting stuff and far more revealing. And I also think in many ways far more interesting than what we saw for episode 9. And that is for The Mandalorian, which we got a ton of details about this during that panel and also from that trailer. Again, even though you're not supposed to have seen it, there's a link in the show notes and you can go and watch it. There's been quite a few sources that'll let you see all of this content, and it is well worth watching. I mean, it's really, really something to see. Now, that also leads to a lot of news about Disney Plus, but I'm going to save that conversation for after we talk about The Mandalorian. But we also know that, so Star Wars movies are going to be, was this at the Investor Day where we found out about Disney Plus as well, that Bob Iger said Star Wars movies are going to be going on a hiatus for a while.
Which is weird because that news came out just before Celebration started. And I thought that was just such a weird move on his part to sort of just kind of like, and I don't know if he was just trying to bury the lead by having to like, well, say this, and then all this stuff is going to come out in Celebration, and people will forget about that I said it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that is going to lead to, a question that we'll get into a little bit later on. But we certainly, I mean, and there was I won't spend a whole segment on it, but we also got more news that K2SO is going to return, and was it Alan Tudyk or whatever his name is, Tudyk? He's going to be in the Cassian show. So there was some news about the Cassian Andor show, which I think is going to be cool. But The Mandalorian, holy shit. I was really, the trailer that you watch and, the panel, you can see the panel. You just can't technically watch the trailer, technically.
Yeah. And let me just say that, the panel, to me, that was the highlight of Celebration. Even if, it's worth watching, even though you don't get to see, the footage, because you can go and watch that separately. But I really do recommend people go and watch the whole panel because it was fantastic.
Yeah. Now, who all was on the panel? You had Favreau was there,
right?
And
Dave Filoni.
Filoni, of course, was there.
The heir to the empire.
Yeah, boy, he was a busy boy at Celebration this year. And was Carl Weathers there?
He was.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. It's a great panel. You're totally right about that. But anyway, we find out a lot about it, and a lot of it can be kind of summed up in the footage that was shown, because there were some interviews with Pedro Pascal, who is playing the Mandalorian. We didn't get his name right. I didn't catch that.
He's just the Mandalorian.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, so the footage is really, you get to see Gina Carano, and you get a really great feel. Go ahead.
She was great in that panel too. I was surprised by she has good charisma.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of hers since the American Gladiators days. She was one of in the reboot that they did in the later aughts for American Gladiators. It was hosted by Hulk Hogan. She was one of the gladiators, and holy crap! I mean, she just stole the camera, and she's been doing that in Hollywood now for a little bit. But she looks great. They did give a name to her character. Most of the other characters, Carl Weathers' characters, you did end up her name's Cara Dune, which I think is kind of cool. Carl Weathers' character's name is Grief. And we did get some explanation of who these characters were. You do know that Carl Weathers seems to be some kind of a handler in many ways for the Mandalorian itself. We got a great scene where we got to see Werner Herzog, playing his part as almost like an imperial governor type, in charge of some stormtroopers. And you got a lot of that. You got to see this weapon that we sort of knew was coming, but it was a weapon based around the original weapon that Boba Fett had in the holiday special.
The cartoon.
From the cartoon, from his first appearance. And it looked like I saw sand crawlers, on Tatooine. With Jawas. Go ahead.
I got to say, the sets in this series this looks film level production values.
Oh, all the way.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some interesting looking, almost like speeder bikes or swoops. I mean, they look like Imperials were on them, so they'd be speeder bikes. Otherwise, they're swoops if they're more independent. I think we saw the Mandalorian actually riding a dewback. So, not that these things have to only be on Tatooine, but it looks like we might be spending some time there. We do know that it's 5 years after Return of the Jedi. That's a very exacting bit of information. And the footage I saw also, I think it was just recently announced that the ship, the Mandalorian's ship, is actually a model. It's not CGI.
It is.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's worth watching the panel for, because they actually go into they built the physical model, just sort of as a maquette. Which they don't intend to use in the movie. And like people around Lucasfilm heard that somebody's building a model. It's like, oh, they're using models. Somebody's using model, and like a bunch of people got excited and started getting involved. And I think even John Knoll got involved, and they actually built an old school motion control rig to film the model and do the effects and stuff like that, which is really cool. I mean, just like, and it really speaks to like, you know, the passion for the way things were originally done, you know, like up until I'd say even episode 1, where
Sure.
we're using a lot of, you know, like actual models and stuff for the starships. And I think there's something, you know, I was really impressed with the effects in Rogue One for the space battle they did, but there's still something that just feels a little bit lacking when you use CGI. And it's, you know, like, you know, they talk about the uncanny valley. Well, I'd say there's even an uncanny valley with like, you know, non-human things like starships and starfighters and things like that, where like, I can still kind of tell the difference.
Yeah. Regardless of budget, even too, I think that's very true. Like nothing looks as real as, you know, the refit NCC 1701. I don't know any other starship that like ever looks that real, you know, as far as within like Star Trek. And that's usually when you're seeing it, you know, in the movie. I mean, it just looks, it's a 6-foot model and it just looks so gorgeous. And it looks like it's really flying through space. It's pretty amazing. And yeah, there's something to the practical effects that I think they realized. And that's why they're pushing hard for that, because that's been going on in Star Wars now ever since Disney bought it with Force Awakens and so on.
Right. Because that was the big thing is that, oh, we're using practical effects in this movie.
Yeah.
And I, you know, it was almost kind of like misleading in the way they do it, because I think when a lot of people think about quote unquote practical effects, they are thinking about the model starships. They're not thinking about the costumes so much. I mean, that's certainly an element of it, but they still use CGI for all this, you know, the starfighters and you know, the stuff, the ships that they used in the sequel trilogy. So, I mean, that was kind of a disappointment that, you know, yeah, okay, sure, they used real costumes and whatnot, and they built real sets. That's all very nice and well. But like people like me, they're really passionate about like special effects and visual effects.
Yeah.
Like it's all about the models, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. Yeah, during the panel, they also talked about how they're going to pull from the EU, from the old expanded universe, which I thought was that was really cool. So I mean, there's a ton of right moves that they're doing with this show.
Yeah.
I mean, and that panel like really hit it home, and even just watching the footage, I think really drives it home. I mean, just some very cool sequences going on with it, and the Mandalorian itself, the character, looks awesome. I've heard some people suggest that basically the Mandalorian is filling in a gap that Boba Fett has left behind, like that, because we don't have that really cool character, that the Mandalorian is there to like be this kind of cool, mysterious character that Star Wars needs. How do you feel about that kind of argument?
You know, I'm not going to disagree with it. It's not really what interests me about the show.
Right.
I can understand why people would feel that way.
Sure.
I also think that this show, to me, what really fills the gap is the time space that it takes place in, because everything that we've gotten thus far between, you know, Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens has been kind of crap.
Yeah, and this does not look like crap at all.
No, this looks great.
Yeah,
I mean,
really
like
does.
It's kind of funny. Like I feel myself in a lot of ways like I'm returning to the same mindset that I had before The Force Awakens came out, and that I'm excited about everything going on in Star Wars except the movies.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't disagree. Let me shift gears on this. I mean, just a little bit. What are the chances, you think, because of the time frame that you brought up, you know, between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, what do you think are the chances that Luke Skywalker could end up in this? That
that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like they just bring him in as like a shock I mean, we know it's only going to be 8 episodes, but if he comes in and it's like a cliffhanger, and you just see. I mean, I don't want it to be a cliffhanger. We already had that with The Force Awakens, and they dropped the ball. But I mean, I could see that happening. I think that would be exciting, frankly. If I mean, it will be beyond exciting to have Luke Skywalker show up at the end of this, or somewhere in it.
I wouldn't want it to be like something where he has like, even like speaking lines within the show. It'd be a cool cameo.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I would want to see like the character become actively involved in, say, if they do a second season.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I see it as like a potential possibility. I mean, it would get people buzzing, and would also, people are talking about episode 9 healing wounds from episode 8. I think the Mandalorian would heal a ton of wounds if Luke Skywalker shows up, at some point here. And there's got to be a reason they're doing it, like they keep talking about 5 years after Return of the Jedi. Like, I feel like there's something there.
And I think I at the very least, I think what they need to do is, even if Luke isn't going to show up in the show, they have to talk about him.
Yeah.
Because we know that from The Force Awakens that, even people in this backwater world of Jakku have heard of the legendary Luke Skywalker and his adventures.
Right.
And so we need to see the legend growing, as it were.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. And this is a prime opportunity to do it, especially if we are going to have that hiatus of films, or as far as with the films. I think that this would be a smart move. So anyway, so yeah, I mean, any other thoughts on The Mandalorian? I mean, it's very exciting what we saw. The footage looked great. Everything sounded great. Like, I mean, I'm just hearing all the right moves.
Yeah, and they're very much, I think, kind of trying to advertise that, hey, we're listening to the fans and we're trying to do the right thing here. One of the other things it was a big takeaway at that panel for me is this is very much Lucasfilm giving Dave Filoni the opportunity to cut his teeth on live action.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
He very much got the sense that he and Jon Favreau have a very good working relationship, and that it's not just Dave learning about live action from Jon Favreau, but Jon Favreau is actually learning a lot about Star Wars from Dave. And so we have this great sort of like collaborative thing that's coming about in the show that I think is just it's so awesome. And I think I have no doubts that this show is going to be just wildly successful. And I think that success is very much going to be, an indication of Filoni's future in the company.
Yeah, I agree with that. And speaking of course, where the show is going to end up being on, it is going to be on Disney Plus, which at that same event where Bob Iger talked about the hiatus in Star Wars movies, he also made most of the announcements about Disney Plus. And Disney Plus is going to be, it launches November 12th. And I think they said The Mandalorian is supposed to be available on launch day. I don't think we've heard whether or not, did they say on the panel if it was going to be if it was going to be binge word or, bingeable, or
I don't remember catching that. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I don't remember either. I haven't seen any news otherwise, but anyway, that'll be November 12th. The interesting thing is the pricing for this, which it's going to be $6.99 a month or it's going to be $70 a year that you can pay for it, which is
very competitive.
Yeah, very competitive, because Netflix's cheapest plan is like $9, and so you're much under that. I think
they just raised their prices recently too.
Exactly. Yeah, I personally, and it's going to be at the $7 price tag, and there's no ads. Like CBS All Access has has a cheaper version that has ads, right? But then there's a more expensive version that's over $10 that doesn't have ads. I mean, I think this is going to do wildly. I mean, just be wildly successful.
It's going to do gangbusters, no doubt.
Yeah.
Especially at that price. I mean, like nobody can beat it. In fact, I think, in terms of, the industry of streaming media, I think it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I do agree also with the argument that there's so many streaming services now that torrenting is going to become very much in vogue again. Yes, that's going to happen, no doubt. But also, like, I mean, this really isn't, and I think people forget about this. This isn't Disney's first rodeo with this kind of thing. You used to have to, when I was a kid, you had to pay for the Disney Channel. It was like HBO. Right. You had to pay extra on top of the cable package. So, and they did well then, you know, and at the time it was basically ad free. So it's not like they haven't done this before. It's not like they don't have an experience with how do I have something run, you know, with plenty of content 24/7, etc.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is like where Disney totally outclasses somebody like, say, CBS. Because I mean, as big as CBS is and as much content as they have, they're no Disney, and especially since Disney just acquired the Fox catalog.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. You know, an interesting thing too is actually the last time I ever saw, not on DVD but on TV, that I saw the Ewok movies was on when Disney was a pay channel. So, you know, that Disney Star Wars relationship been there for a long time. And again, you know, Disney knows how to do this. This isn't anything new for them. So anyway, that'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I expect it to do very well. I expect The Mandalorian to do very well. This is going to be great stuff. So another, trailer that you do get to see in the live stream, I'm surprised they haven't released it separately, or at least not that I've seen. The official Star Wars channel didn't. But there was a whole panel, actually, for the Clone Wars, which is returning for what is basically season 7. The panel was great, well worth watching. Sam Witwer is there. I mean, everybody ends up being there, like everybody. But Filoni's there initially, and Sam Witwer, and Ashley Eckstein, and everyone. And it was you even get to see some footage from the show of this like new experimental clone troopers unit, which was interesting. And there was also and they did end up giving a full trailer that they, like they did with Rise of Skywalker, where they showed it twice. And I thought the trailer was dynamite. I mean, everything was very exciting. We're getting a lot more Ahsoka, which fucking right. You know, like I'm so on board for that. It looks like she's going to have a little more missions with the clone troopers, as it were, you know, and an encounter with Darth Maul, or with Maul as well. Yeah, I didn't see anything where I was like, oh, what the hell? You know, everything I saw just looked phenomenal. What did you think of the Clone Wars trailer?
Yeah, unfortunately, since I'm such a huge like Dave Filoni super fan, there was nothing unfortunately that surprised me in the trailer. Like, I know what all these stories are about because, like, you know, if you follow him on Twitter and different, you know, stuff, like he's released art and talked before about what was originally planned for the next season of Clone Wars. Right. And, you know, like we even got a book that was supposed to comprise several episodes of that season with the one with Ventress.
Oh yeah, exactly. So
which unfortunately I don't think they're going to do those episodes since they did do the book. But man, that would be cool.
No, if they wanted to do a Dark Disciple arc, which was the book, I'd be totally on board with that. But I was surprised. I mean, this was a very Ahsoka-centric trailer, as to where the other one felt like it was all Obi-Wan and Anakin. The initial one that we saw, which was that last year's celebration.
Yeah, they teased her at the end because, you know, she shows up in the hologram. Right. And yeah, I hear again, like I know where that's going.
Yeah. I mean, this is a natural succession of things. Right. But that was, I mean, that is incredibly exciting. Cannot wait to see that. Right. Because that looks, I mean, everything they had going on in it looked exciting. I was very pleased with that. So any other thoughts on Clone Wars? I mean, that's going to be dropping with Disney Plus as well, as far as I know.
And we also heard that Bo-Katan is going to be returning.
Yeah.
So we're going to have, there's going to be a lot of Mandalorian stuff.
Yeah, which that'll be cool. Also, you know, something that was funny that happened during the panel, he's introducing these 2 new characters that Ahsoka's going to encounter as she goes into the lower levels of Coruscant. Right. And he mentions that they're from the level 1313. And it's amazing because, like, the crowd goes nuts as soon as he says 1313. Make that fucking game already.
Right, right.
Like, everybody knows.
We're going to talk about that in a little bit here, too. I mean,
yeah.
There's something to be said.
Yeah. But it was amazing because even Filoni like stops. He says only at Star Wars Celebration can you just mention a level of a city on a planet and have people pop. Like they know, everybody knows about 1313. Why are they ignoring this? Oh, anyway, but it was great. I mean, that was so cool. For even the mention was nice. So anyway, do you want to move on to, speaking of gaming, you want to phase right into gaming here?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, so we also got a trailer for and a lot of news around a new game which had been previously hinted at, being made by EA, but of course EA is pretty much an entire country. It has like little mini states within it. This one being Respawn, which I think Respawn is responsible for the game Anthem, which I've heard.
Anthem is BioWare. You're thinking of Titanfall.
Titanfall. Okay, right. Respawn is responsible for Titanfall. So Respawn, not new to the game, no pun intended there, but they are making Jedi Fallen Order, and this is something that happens this is a game that takes place in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. You are playing a somewhat of a Padawan character or a Jedi, like a character that's just barely a Jedi that is on the run. And we do get some action with the Inquisitors. We do know that based upon the trailer that's within it. The game is going to be coming out, I think November 15th is the release date for it. You can pre-order it now on Origin. And I think there's a deluxe edition that comes with a bunch of extra shit for like $70, and then there's the normal edition of the game, which is only which is the standard, which is only $50. There are some pre-order bonuses, but it's interesting that when you go to the Origin page for it, the pre-order bonuses are all cosmetic. There is supposedly no advantages to any of the initial DLC that you can get with this, because one of the things they kept saying about this game before even the trailer dropped, no microtransactions, no planned DLC. That's a very specific phrase. And I mean, they're and no multiplayer whatsoever. Now I hear those things and I initially get excited, right? This is a completely single player game, which a lot of these Star Wars games of the past, that was their MO. They were single player. And I mean, that's not always true. Some games like the Jedi Knight series had great multiplayer, which we've talked about on this show in the past. But it sounds like EA is really trying to heal some wounds here. The problem is I see the trailer and I'm like, like the trailer didn't do much for me.
I'm not even swayed by what they're saying about it, because
tell me more.
During Celebration before Battlefront 2 came out, the big talk was, no planned DLC or no paid DLC and no season pass, because that'd be a big point of contention, that they were selling season passes that cost almost as much as the game itself.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And
and we know how that turned out. So fool me once.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what did you think of the trailer? Anything? Did it excite you at all?
Not in the least.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, if there's one thing in Star Wars that I'm less excited about than Episode 9, it's this game.
Yeah. I mean, I'm expecting, you don't really see it. There's going to have to be a confrontation with Vader or something. Like that's the only thing that's going to get people talking. Go ahead.
And honestly, like the story that it seems like they're setting up, it's like it's either Caleb Doom, who goes on to become Kanan Jarrus, or it's just a copycat.
Yeah. Which right now, I mean, the character does have a name, and it's not. So I mean, maybe it's a copycat or just like a hidden name.
Yeah. So I mean, if it's not Caleb Doom, then it's just a copycat of that character. We've already seen this kind of story arc before.
Right. No, it doesn't. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't feel like Knights of the Old Republic or anything like that. So,
and it doesn't. The visuals don't even look exciting. I mean, I went back and speaking of 1313, I went back and looked at the trailer, that they came out with for 1313. I don't know if it was trailer. It was kind of like an early gameplay footage or whatever. Yeah. And to be honest with you, the graphics in Jedi Fallen Order don't look that much better than 1313. And that was how long ago? It was like, was it 2013, 2014?
That was a long time. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
just
it's been
pre-Disney.
like 5 years ago, and this game looks like that. I mean, like, it's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit, and I hate to admit it, for a split second, I was like, yeah, all right, no DLC, no multiplayer, like you're speaking my language, no microtransactions, you're speaking my language, I'll pre-order it. But then I was like, no,
Oh,
no, EA's got to do
yeah.
like 5-6 games that are fucking great before I'm willing to do a pre-order again.
I'm going to hold you to this, Brian. But I remember when Battlefront 2 came out, and you said you would never pre-order another EA Star Wars game ever again.
Yeah,
and I'm holding you to that.
All right.
You know what? I'm saying this directly to our audience. Do not pre-order this game.
All right, I won't do it. I mean, ironically, like it's the first game where, I mean, there's no advantage to pre-ordering, so I don't even know why they're bothering, or apparently there's no advantage other than cosmetic ones. And they were very careful in that language, saying that you get cosmetic, DLC. Like it doesn't give you any advantage in the game. I'm amazed that EA is in any way saying that this is like a good thing, having no multiplayer and having all this other stuff, because they have made their bread and butter off of the exact opposite of everything they're selling Fallen Order on. So I don't know. I'm curious to see more, not so much this game, but what happens in the broader gaming industry around the sales of Fallen Order. If this ends up, like if this does gangbusters somehow, because of the lack of multiplayer and microtransactions and everything like that, is this going to have broader ramifications? I'm more interested in that than the actual game itself.
Well, there's some, to be honest with you, there's some, in my opinion, some real industry stink coming out of this too. And that some people in gaming journalists and whatnot are making the argument or statement that, well, if you want more single player games, then you're required to buy this game. Right. And I'm like, no, you need to sell me on a good game.
Yeah.
And then you can prove to me whether or not you've earned my money.
Right. Exactly.
I'm not going to buy a game just on the merits that it's single player. That's bullshit.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, EA has so much they have to make up for and prove. I mean, Rian Johnson's a drop in the bucket as far as fucking with Star Wars compared to EA. I mean, it's really, well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line.
I think they're aware that at bare minimum they need to keep their noses clean, but that's, the bare minimum effort is not going to be enough, in my opinion.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on this. Again, November 15th is the release date. It is available for pre-order. I recommend not pre-ordering, and the reviews are going to have to stand tall on this one. I don't even trust the reviewers. Reviewers get paid off.
Yeah.
That means nothing.
The whole games journalism thing is, I mean, it's been a mess, for a long time, but it's so transparently corrupt now. Yeah,
it's bad. So anyway, Celebration, I mean, there was a lot of other things talked about. We may get into more of that in the future. I mean, there's just so much news to come out of that event. But I think we hit the high notes. Clone Wars, Mandalorian, what brief news came out about the Cassian Andor show, of course, episode 9, and Jedi Fallen Order. Well, you know how we feel about that. So something I am actually excited about, I want to get into, it's not exactly a fan production of the month, but it's also not something directly, well, I mean, it's under Disney's purview. Anything Star Wars is, but it's kind of a side thing that this is something I did pre-order, and I think people should pre-order. And you actually brought it to my attention, Rob, and it's the Hanes guide. Now, people may not know what Hanes is. I don't mean the underwear. Haynes. Okay. And these are very popular guides for like your car so that you could fix your own brakes back when you could work on cars. And I love these things. I love these kinds of books. And they've been doing a science fiction run with these for Star Trek and Star Wars for quite some time. In fact, last year they did one for the YT-1300 for the Millennium Falcon, an updated version, in fact, for the movie Solo. And now they are coming out with one for the TIE Fighter. And will they cover other TIE fighters other than the good old classic TIE Fighter LN? I'm sure they will.
That's going to confirm that. I think that's going to include the LN, the Interceptor, and the First Order.
Oh, that Special Forces one was
the
awesome.
Special Forces, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a kick-ass TIE fighter. I mean, and since this is TIE Fighter Renegades, I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that this is coming out. I don't know if we'll have time to review it in May. Again, it comes out May 23rd, I think. Ryder Wyndham is writing it, which Ryder Wyndham has done great work within Star Wars for a very long time with, kind of more encyclopedic and reference work. So I'm excited for this. I have the YT 1300 guide. I did review it on TIE Fighter Renegades. I have other ones for Star Trek, like they have one for the Bird of Prey. They even came out with one for the Death Star a while back.
Right.
But these are the official kind of Disney re-release versions. And so I've been very interested in collecting them. How do you feel about this book, Rob?
Oh, I love like all of these technical manuals and whatnot.
Yeah.
I mean, just like ever since they came out with the Star Trek tactical manual back in the day, I've eaten all these books up. And It's interesting that, it's kind of nice that Haynes is able to continue doing business, because really with the cars the way they are today, you can't work on them yourselves anymore. And
there's no point to a Haynes guide today.
Right. And so them kind of spreading out into sort of like these more fictional technical manuals, I think that's a brilliant move on their part. And, kudos to them for keeping it alive, because there was a time when the sort of science fiction technical manuals were kind of dying out for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, with the Star Trek stuff, you got a technical manual for Next Gen and Deep Space Nine, but there was never a Voyager technical manual or an Enterprise technical manual.
Right. And there probably will never be a Discovery one, because they keep changing what that ship can do every week. And I don't know how the hell they fit that many shuttlecraft in there. I'd love to see the Haynes guide for that. Woo!
Right.
What the hell? Of course, if people want to listen to Sovryn Trek and hear all about all that on Zomia ONE, you can. Our most recent episode, Rob and I broke down into that. Holy fuck! Anyway, yeah. So you're not going to fit the Discovery in a Haynes guide, but yes, it's great to have these books out there. I mean, they really these reference guides had a really big boon, I think, in the 70s, and then in the 90s again, they were a big deal. And then, they did seem to fall away. So I'm glad that they're still out there and that they're happening. And I think the TIE Fighter one is well due. They have ones for NASA things too, for Voyager and a bunch of different, Voyager 1 and 2 and a bunch of other ones. I mean, they're all really cool. Just lots of very informative, very fun books. So this is one to check out, folks. Link is in the show notes if you want to get your hands on it. Anything else to add on to that, Rob?
No, like I said, I've got it pre-ordered too, so really looking forward to that showing up in the mail.
Yeah, we'll do a full review as soon as we've both, really picked through it. So, anyway, yeah, and Ryder Wyndham, like I said, he does great work overall. So I'm very excited for this. So why don't we go ahead? So there's our quasi fan production of the month. It's just something I wanted to make sure got out there. Why don't we get into our question of the month, which is basically, with all the news that came out of Celebration, so I mean, and really all the news that's been happening over the past few months, with this show getting announced, this trilogy getting announced. I mean, there was announcements of, isn't Rian Johnson directing some of the Benioff and Weiss films, or at least the first one?
Yeah, I'm not clear on that either.
Yeah,
and I know they've talked to George Lucas as well. So
right. But now, I mean, there's a lot of announcements of this sort of stuff. As far as when that's going to happen, we don't know, because, again, Bob Iger came out and said there's going to be a hiatus on Star Wars films.
Right. But he didn't say for how long.
Right. We don't know. Yeah, I mean, that could be 2 years. 2 years would be a hiatus, since we've been getting one a year. Right. It could be 3 years. We don't know. I have comments on to why I think the hiatus is happening, but it doesn't lead us to a question, which is, is Bob Iger worried there's too much Star Wars out there? You've got all these TV shows coming out. You have Clone Wars coming back. There's so many things. You have the theme park dropping. Galaxy's Edge is, and we keep getting more news for that. I mean, that's going to hit in just a few months. Do you think, Rob, is there such a thing as too much Star Wars? I mean, can we burn out on this, on the amount that they put out, that Disney puts out?
I mean, we have kind of talked about this before.
Yeah.
I think you can experience a burnout, especially with the feature films.
Sure.
We talked before in our review of Solo that, the release window between Episode 8 and Solo was way too short.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. and releasing it anywhere near Avengers was a fail.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with the films that that can be a problem. I mean, do you think that's what's behind Bob Iger's decision to have a hiatus in films?
I would guess so. Yeah, probably. I think they realized that was a misstep. That and that I think a lot of Solo's problem. Like Solo was not. We've joked about it being the unnecessary movie, but it wasn't a terrible movie. I still enjoyed it, but I do think it definitely suffered from people's fallout from people's opinions on 8. So I think they very much recognize that with a release window that short, that negative word can impact preceding films, and they definitely don't want. They want these films to be successes in their own right, and I agree they should be. Yeah.
I mean, so part of my opinion on the hiatus is actually because the Avatar movies, as in James Cameron's Avatar movies into Pandora, which is also getting a theme park at Disney, right next to Galaxy's Edge. I think it might be more to let those films breathe and get established. And I mean, because you're still going to have to come out with Marvel films.
Yeah.
And I think if Disney was pushing Marvel, Star Wars, and Avatar at the same time, I don't think there's enough room with Avatar, having been so long. And talk about something I liked Avatar. I actually did, but I haven't talked to anybody who's like, fuck, I want a sequel to that. I've never heard that.
There was a huge amount of hype around it when it was out in theaters.
Yeah.
And then again, when it got, released on DVD.
Yeah.
But outside of those two things, it just, to me, it never really seemed to be a big deal. And quite frankly, I don't get it.
Yeah.
There's a very real possibility, all this, time and money they're investing into the sequel and stuff they're going to do around it could end up blowing up in their faces if it turns out to be a dud.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not a great movie, they're in trouble, and it can't. Part of what made Avatar big back in the day when it first came out was it was a resurgence, a minor resurgence at that, of the 3D craze in film, and because it did 3D so well, that's what got a lot of people talking about it, and what made it a little bit bigger than I think it should have been. Even though, again, I enjoyed the movie, I dig it, but. Yeah, I think they want to establish Avatar in theaters and not have Star Wars in its way. They can't do anything about Marvel. That ship has to keep, sailing. But that's sort of my feeling on what the hiatus is about. As far as to, can we burn out from Star Wars? I mean, and I know you know this, Robin, because we have talked about this in the past. But I mean, we remember the fan version of the Dark Times in the Star Wars universe,
right?
Which was the late 80s, early 90s, when we had no Star Wars whatsoever. We had nothing, or practically nothing. And we had to wait for Heir to the Empire and Dark Empire to drop, or the West End Games, or whatever, to come out and kind of rescue us from those dark times. And we were that hungry that we just scooped all that stuff up. And I'm always reticent to say, don't make any more Star Wars, because I remember when I would have, I would have done some terrible things just to get some more Star Wars in my life when I was 16. And I really don't want to be the guy that comes out there and says, okay, now take a break. That's too much.
Yeah.
I kind of hear you on the movies, but the comic books and the books, I don't think you can do too many of those, keep those rolling. Go ahead.
Like I said earlier on this podcast, I personally, I'm really excited for everything going on in Star Wars that isn't a motion picture right now. And right. I think this is also giving that material, time to breathe and stand on its own. I think Star Wars is very much heading into sort of a television era,
which it would do well for. And
right.
And honestly, if Disney Plus goes gangbusters, I could really believe that they might say, we don't need the theaters anymore, and stop sharing that cut of the profits and just put those movies on Disney Plus. Most people I know have a 55, 60 inch screen and I'm not saying it's a good thing. I don't, but they have one in their home. I mean, that's basically a movie theater.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I could see that shift happening. And maybe that's why they're a little skimp on details as far as what's going on with Rian Johnson's movie trilogy for Star Wars, as well as Benioff and Weiss. I mean, it's a thought. So, but yeah, even in film, I don't know that I think we could really burn out. Because like, how many Marvel movies come out a year? How much Marvel shit is out there? And I mean, I think, people that have some critical thinking are burning out, but the Marvel fans aren't burning out at all.
Yeah,
they're just like, keep giving it to me.
I know. I keep seeing things on Twitter, like, like people saying, don't spoil Endgame for me, or like, we're done as friends. And I'm like, I don't care. Spoil it. Right. Spoil the shit out of me. I don't.
Yeah. I still have to see it. I still have to see it happen.
I mean, I think if anything, I think Marvel needs a hiatus more than Star Wars does.
I agree with you completely. I wish they'd do it. I don't think they will, because the money machine just keeps rolling. But
right.
Yeah. I really don't think that there is such a thing as too much Star Wars. I don't know where those kind of ideas and attitudes come from. I think what really happens, if there is ever a loss of money because there's too much of something out there, I don't think it's because people are burned out. I think it's because they're confused. They don't know that, like I know a lot of people who they went to go see Rogue One and they thought it was a sequel to Force Awakens, and they're like, wait, where's Rey? Where's all the like, they just don't know. And I think that's what happens. It's not that they get burnt out, So I mean, that's just my opinion.
Or sometimes they misjudge the market.
Yeah.
I definitely think that's happened with the toys for
Yep.
Star Wars.
Yep.
Is like people don't realize that, like toys are kind of going the way of the dodo for kids.
No, kids don't buy toys anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more of an adult's game. And
Yep.
the amount of product they unleashed on the market for Force Awakens and Last Jedi was just, it was obscene.
Yeah.
And like the stores are literally just trying to give the stuff away, and they can't.
Yeah, very reminiscent of what happened with Episode 1. I guess Disney didn't learn their lesson.
Right, and that's not to say that Star Wars toys can't succeed in the market. You just have to like judge the market correctly, and manage your expectations, and sort of market towards the people that are buying Star Wars toys, which aren't kids.
Right. Or maybe release, some actual Rey figures, and maybe those would sell, but because they're so bad with, well, anyway, that's a long Star Wars problem with selling female characters, in any kind of merchandise form, but that's another conversation for another time. So anyway, yeah, I hear you. I think maybe, the movies, it might be good for Star Wars to do a hiatus. I think that has more to do with what happened with The Last Jedi than anything else, and maybe with Solo than anything else. But I say bring on all the Star Wars. That's fine with me. So unless you have any other comments, Rob, I think we could start wrapping this baby up.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll ask you here at the end, how are you feeling about Star Wars right now, Rob?
Well, I mean, like I said, I am really excited for the Mandalorian and the Clone Wars. The new season of Clone Wars, and I'm looking forward to the other television projects that they've got in mind. So, all that's here again, all that stuff happening outside of the movies, I'm really excited to see. But so far as Episode 9, my expectations are very much in check.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I am excited for, same thing. The Mandalorian, Clone Wars, there's some great stuff coming down. I'm actually reading Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray right now, which has been a very good book so far. But I didn't want to review it yet just because there's the Dooku book also coming out, or audio drama coming out at the end of the month.
Right. That
I think they have some synergy. So I want to talk about them as a whole. But there's some great stuff going on and coming down the pike. So I know it's kind of wishy-washy by each month, but I'm feeling better about Star Wars right now than I am Star Trek. I'll say that, which should not be.
Yeah, that was reversed not that long ago.
Exactly. Yeah. Beginning of this year, there was the exact opposite. I was like, oh no, Star Trek's on a fucking roll. We're ready to roll here.
Yeah.
And no.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling confident about Star Trek at all. But Star Wars, yeah, feeling pretty good about some of this stuff. So yeah, hopeful. Feeling very hopeful. New hope. How about that? So anyway, next month on the on TIE Fighter Renegades, we will be doing, I want to do a special about, well, it's been 20 years since The Phantom Menace hit theaters, and I think there's a lot to talk about. We'll talk about my memories of that time. I think we should talk about Robin's memories of that time, of course, and really break down into a lot more. There was a great 20th anniversary panel for The Phantom Menace during Star Wars Celebration. We'll talk more about that then. So a lot of great stuff to come up in the next TIE Fighter Renegades, and we'll get that to you, well, as soon as it makes sense, because there's so much news that seems to drop. I like to collect as much as I can at once. And of course, we'll have a comic book update at that point as well. So anyway, Rob, as always, a great time. Thank you for being on the show, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and well, we'll wrap this baby up. TIE Fighter Renegades signing off. Woo!
Woo! Can you get enough of the Man of Tomorrow? I didn't think so. Well, now you're going to get even more, along with some of the hottest hosts and podcasts around, because now Sovryn Tech has become an entire network. Woo! Zomia ONE, the most rebellious podcast network in the galaxy, with bleeding-edge shows covering science, technology, and even pop culture. Podcasts like Sovryn Trek, bringing you the latest and greatest in everything Star Trek. TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast, where the Man of Tomorrow and Robin Freebeard talk Star Wars like no other show out there. The Hard and Fast podcast, where metal is king and the latest album reviews and interviews with the greatest acts in hard rock and heavy metal happen. And you can even become a member of the Zomia ONE Underground and get access to thousands of hours of exclusive content and shows. And this isn't Patreon, baby. Oh no, this is all happening on the premier podcast platform, Podbean. So head over to ZomiaOne.com, that's ZomiaOne.com, and become a part of the future with Zomia ONE, and become a member of the Zomia ONE Underground. And while you're at it, download the Podbean app on iOS and Android. Be the future. ZomiaOne.com.